You have to stop blaming the world. It doesn't help. It only delays your growth. The more you point fingers at your parents, your ex, the system, the economy, your genetics, your teachers, or whatever else, the less you're actually doing about your own life. And it might feel good in the moment, it might feel justified, but it's poison over time. It erodes your strength. If you're constantly looking outside of yourself for the reason why things went wrong, you'll keep missing the one place where change is actually possible, within you. Now, I'm not saying that nothing bad has happened to you. Of course it has. Life isn't fair. People have been betrayed, abused, let down, lied to. Some of you were never shown love. Some of you were raised in chaos. Some of you lost people too soon. But here's the hard truth. None of that changes your responsibility now. You can carry those wounds forever and let them turn into excuses for why you're angry, lazy, self-sabotaging, addicted, or bitter. Or you can turn around and say, it stops with me. That moment, that shift is where all power begins. You don't get to choose your past, but you are 100% responsible for what you do with it now. When people say, I am the way I am because of what happened to me, they're not wrong, but they're also not done. That's not where the sentence should end. The real question is, do you want to stay that way? Because no one's coming to fix it for you. No one's showing up with a magic reset button. At some point, you either rise above it or you get dragged by it for the rest of your life. That's what taking responsibility really means. It's not about guilt. It's not about shame. It's not even about fault. It's about ownership. It's about saying, this is my life now, and even if I didn't cause all the damage, I'm still the one who has to clean it up. And you can start anywhere. You don't need to know exactly how to fix everything. Just begin by telling the truth. Where have you been lying to yourself? Where are you still pretending it's someone else's job to rescue you? Where are you giving your power away by waiting for the perfect conditions to act? Taking radical responsibility means no more waiting, no more stalling, no more stories, just action. Brutally honest forward, facing action. It doesn't mean you stop feeling pain. It doesn't mean the past didn't hurt. It means you choose not to be ruled by it. You can acknowledge it without surrendering to it. And every time you choose to act despite your pain, despite your fear, despite your history, you are building a version of yourself that is not a product of your past, but a creator of your future. And that's where you begin to feel real strength. Not the fake kind that comes from pretending nothing's wrong, but the deep kind that comes from knowing exactly what's wrong and still showing up anyway. You'll be tempted to fall back into blame. It's easier, it's more comfortable, but comfort is a trap. Comfort keeps you stuck. Responsibility is painful at first. It forces you to look in the mirror, but it's also liberating. Because once you realize you're responsible, you're free. You're no longer waiting for permission. You're no longer hoping someone else will change. You become the change, and that's the beginning of transformation. No one can take that away from you. Not your parents, not your past, not even your trauma. The moment you decide to own your life, the past loses its grip on your future. You stop being a victim of circumstance, and you become the architect of what comes next. And that shift in mindset, that decision to stop outsourcing your power, is what separates those who stay stuck from those who break through. And that decision is yours alone to make. You can't outrun your past forever. It's like dragging a heavy chain behind you while pretending it's not there. And most people live like that, constantly looking forward, constantly trying to distract themselves, pretending the weight isn't real, while deep down they know it's holding them back. The mistake isn't that they made errors or hurt someone or failed. The mistake is that they never stopped long enough to face it. They just buried it and kept moving. But buried things don't stay buried, they rot. They show up in your relationships, in your addictions, in your fear of trying again, in the shame that whispers when you're alone. You think you've moved on, but really, you've just stalled in denial. The truth is, mistakes don't ruin your life. Avoiding them does. You don't heal by hiding. You heal by turning around, opening the door you've kept locked for years, and walking into the mess you left behind. It won't be easy. You'll have to feel things you've avoided, regret, embarrassment, guilt, maybe even grief. But that's the price of freedom. If you want a future that isn't controlled by your past, you have to walk through the uncomfortable process of facing it. And people avoid that because they think it will destroy them, but it won't. In fact, the only way your past destroys you is when you ignore it. What actually heals you is the confrontation, the willingness to admit, yeah, I messed that up. Yes, I hurt people. Yes, I wasted time. Yes, I lied, I ran, I avoided, I failed. You say it. You feel it, you own it. And then here's the powerful part. You move forward with your eyes wide open. That's where maturity begins. That's where real integrity comes from. The more honest you are with yourself, the less power your mistakes have over you. They stop being these haunting ghosts that creep up every time something goes wrong. They become lessons. Reference points, proof that you can grow, and that's what turns pain into strength. But if you keep pretending it never happened, if you keep rewriting the story to make yourself look better, or if you keep numbing the discomfort with distraction, you're just setting yourself up. Repeat it all over again. People talk about starting over, starting fresh, reinventing themselves, and that's great, but it's only possible when you've actually dealt with what came before. A new chapter doesn't matter if you're still carrying the lies from the last one. You can't outrun the consequences of what you refuse to acknowledge. The past is patient. It will wait. It will follow you until you stop and face it. And this isn't about self-punishment. It's about truth. The truth is what sets you free, and part of the truth is this: you're not perfect, and you're not supposed to be. You're not here to avoid all failure. You're here to grow through it. What matters is that you have the courage to tell yourself the full story, not just the version that makes you feel okay, but the version that makes you stronger. And that strength doesn't come from pretending to be innocent. It comes from having the spine to admit you were wrong and the will to become better anyway. So don't keep running. Don't keep hiding behind a new job, a new relationship, a new identity. Those things are temporary shields. They'll fall apart if the foundation underneath is still broken. Face the thing you're most afraid to look at. The conversation you avoided, the choice you regret, the apology you never gave. That's where your freedom lies. In that moment of honest confrontation, you finally reclaim the energy you've been wasting on avoidance. And once you do that, something strange happens. The fear you had begins to fade. You stop being ashamed. You stop feeling like an imposter in your own life. You stop doubting whether you deserve good things, because now you've met yourself fully, and you didn't run away, and that is the beginning of real self-respect. Own your mistakes, or they'll own you. You are not your past, and yet, if you ignore your past, you'll keep becoming it. That's the paradox. People think that moving forward means forgetting what's behind them, pretending it didn't happen, pretending they're a blank slate. But you're not a blank slate. You're a layered, complex, imperfect human being carrying every experience you've had. The question isn't whether your past matters. The question is whether you're going to understand it or let it control you from the shadows. Because if you don't understand it, if you don't examine it, it will rule you, and you won't even know it. That's why people repeat the same relationship patterns. That's why they sabotage every opportunity that comes their way. That's why they keep hitting the same emotional walls again and again. It's not that they're cursed. It's not that they're broken. It's that they haven't taken the time to really look at what shaped them, to see where their behaviors are coming from, to see what beliefs they've inherited. Not because those beliefs are true, but because they were never questioned, and you can't fix what you don't face. So no, you're not your past. But your past is in the room. It's in the way you speak. It's in the way you react. It's in the way you expect people to treat you. It's in your trust issues, your fears, your confidence or lack of it. It's in the choices you make without even realizing why you're making them. And if you want to change your future, you have to become aware of those patterns, not to judge them, not to shame yourself, but to understand them, to learn what shaped you and then decide, deliberately, consciously, what you're going to keep and what you're going to leave behind. Most people never do that. They're too afraid. They cling to who they've always been, even when it's not working anymore. Because it's familiar, because it's safe, because it doesn't require them to confront the uncomfortable truth that some of the things they believe about themselves were built on pain, not reality. Maybe someone made them feel worthless, and now they walk around carrying that invisible script, "I'm not good enough," into everything they do. Maybe they were abandoned, and now they push people away before they get too close. Maybe they failed once, and now they don't even try. The past has a way of writing stories in our minds, but those stories only have power if you keep reading them without questioning the author. When you look at your past with open eyes, when you stop hiding from it or dressing it up with excuses, you start to see the truth. You see the patterns, you see the wounds, you see the moments where you needed protection and instead got pain. And as painful as that might be, it's also clarifying, because now you can ask, is this belief actually true? Is this fear still necessary? Is this reaction helping me or hurting me? You can start to separate your identity from your history. You stop being the person shaped by what happened, and you start becoming the person who chooses what happens next. That's how growth works. It's not about becoming someone totally new. It's about uncovering the part of you that's always been there, buried under everything the past tried to convince you that you were. You're not the mistake you made. You're not the worst thing someone said to you. You're not your trauma. You're not your failure. You're not even your greatest success. You're the one who lived through all of it and still has the capacity to choose something better. And when you finally understand that, you stop needing to escape your past. You start using it, because the past can be a weight, or it can be a teacher. It can keep you stuck, or it can push you forward, but only if you stop being afraid of it. Only if you stop trying to erase it and start integrating it. You take the lesson. You let go of the baggage, and then you walk forward, clearer, wiser, stronger. Because now you know what you're carrying, and more importantly, you know what you've put down. That's how you stop living as a reflection of where you've been and start living as a reflection of where you're going. There's a reason you're stuck, and it's not always because you don't know what to do next. It's often because you're still chained to what happened before. You carry it not just in your memory, but in your nervous system, in your identity, in the way you talk to yourself when no one's listening. You might smile on the surface, you might say you've moved on, but deep down there's resentment, guilt, shame, or bitterness that hasn't been processed. And until you deal with that, until you forgive, you'll keep dragging the same emotional weight into every room you walk into. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean saying everything was okay. It doesn't mean you approve of what happened. It doesn't mean you forget. What it means is that you refuse to let what happened define you anymore. You refuse to carry the burden one more step forward, because the truth is, unforgiveness is a form of self-sabotage. It convinces you that holding onto pain gives you power, but it doesn't. It gives you poison. It robs you of energy. It clouds your thinking. It makes you harder, colder, more suspicious. And over time, it turns you into the very thing you hate. That's how cycles repeat. Forgiving others is hard, especially when they never apologized. Especially when they don't even think they did anything wrong. And especially when you feel like forgiving them lets them off the hook. But here's the truth, they were never on the hook. They moved on, they forgot, they built a new life. Meanwhile, you've been sitting in the same emotional prison, replaying the scene over and over, hoping that somehow it'll change. It won't. The only way it changes is when you stop needing the story to end differently, and start choosing to move forward anyway. And what about forgiving yourself? That's often even harder. You know the truth about what you did. You know who you hurt. You know the lies you told, the chances you wasted, the people you let down. And the voice in your head never lets you forget. It says you're not worthy. You'll never change. You don't deserve a second chance. But that voice is not truth. It's shame. And shame keeps you small. It keeps you hiding. It keeps you living like you're broken beyond repair. But you're not. You're human, and humans screw up. They make poor decisions. They act out of fear and insecurity and pain. But they can also grow. They can also change. They can also redeem. You can't rewrite the past, but you can transform the meaning of it. You can look back and say, I failed, but I learned. I hurt people, but I owned it. I was lost, but I didn't stay lost. That's what redemption looks like. It's not pretending the damage never happened. It's using it to build something better. But none of that happens if you keep punishing yourself forever. You don't get stronger by beating yourself up. You get stronger by taking responsibility, making amends where you can, and then choosing deliberately, bravely, not to live in that version of yourself anymore. Some of you are waiting to feel better before you forgive, but that's backwards. Forgiveness is what creates the space to feel better. It's what removes the block that's been sitting between you and peace. You've been carrying a heavy emotional load, and you think it's protecting you, but really, it's exhausting you. You were never meant to hold on this long. You were meant to face it, feel it, process it, and let it go. It's going to be uncomfortable. You might cry, you might shake, you might feel like you're falling apart. But you're not falling apart, you're releasing what's been holding you hostage. You're reclaiming your capacity to love, to trust, to try again, to move forward without dragging the past like a corpse behind you. And that is strength, that is maturity, that is real transformation. So forgive, not because they deserve it, not because you're weak, but because you're finally ready to stop suffering for something that already happened. Forgive because your future is too important to sacrifice on the altar of your past. People don't just wake up one day stuck. It happens slowly, almost invisibly, over time, and usually it's because they're reliving the same story again and again without realizing it. The same types of relationships, the same failures, the same self-doubt. It's like a script has been written deep inside them, and no matter how hard they try to change their circumstances, they keep ending up in the same emotional place. That's what happens when you don't break the cycle. You repeat it, and you don't even know you're doing it. If you look at your life and you see the same patterns showing up over and over again, that's not a coincidence. It's a signal, and that signal is telling you something's unresolved. Something inside you is still running the show. Maybe it's a belief that you're not good enough. Maybe it's a fear of abandonment. Maybe it's the idea that love always hurts, or that failure is inevitable, or that people can't be trusted. Whatever it is, it's not random, it's deeply rooted, and until you confront it, you'll build your entire future on top of it, again and again. This is how people stay trapped. They try to change the outcome without changing the pattern. They think a new job will fix it, or a new partner, or a new city. But none of that works if you're still carrying the same inner script. You'll just attract the same chaos with a different name. You'll end up back in the same emotional loops, wondering why nothing ever works out. But it's not the world that's doing it to you. It's the unresolved parts of yourself that are silently steering the wheel. So you have to stop. You have to pause long enough to look back and ask, where did this begin? When did I start believing this was normal? Who taught me that love equals pain? Who convinced me that I'm not worthy of peace or stability? And why have I never questioned it? Those are hard questions, and most people avoid them. Because once you ask them, you have to face the truth. You have to admit that maybe the problem isn't just the outside world. It's also what you've accepted as truth on the inside. But once you see the pattern, once you recognize it, you can't unsee it, and that's where the change begins. You start to catch yourself in the moment when you're about to react the way you always do, when you're about to sabotage, when you're about to settle for less again. You stop and ask, is this the cycle repeating? Or is this a moment I could actually choose differently? And that's the real power choice. Most people think they don't have it. They say things like, that's just how I am, or it's always been like this, or this is what I'm used to. But that's not truth. That's conditioning, and conditioning can be broken. You're not a machine stuck on autopilot. You have the ability to interrupt your patterns. You can say no, even when everything inside you is used to saying yes. You can leave, even when your fear tells you to stay. You can believe something new about yourself, even if the old belief screams louder. But you have to be conscious. You have to be intentional. You can't wait for it to feel natural because at first it won't. Breaking the cycle feels uncomfortable. It feels unfamiliar. That's because your nervous system is used to the chaos. It's used to the disappointment. It's used to the pain, so peace feels boring. Healthy love feels suspicious. Success feels like an accident waiting to be undone. But those are just echoes from your past. They're not signals of truth. They're signals of trauma, and the only way to change that is to stop listening to the voice of the old you and start practicing the choices of the new you, over and over until it sticks. And when you do that, when you consistently interrupt the pattern, you start to create something new. You build a new baseline, a new normal. You stop being a product of your past, and you start becoming a product of your decisions. It's slow, it's subtle, but it's real, and it's how you finally move forward, not just in location, but in identity. You stop being someone who survives their cycle and start becoming someone who ends it. Because the truth is, if you don't break the cycle, it will break you. Everyone gets hurt. Everyone carries some form of pain, but not everyone learns from it. And that's what separates growth from stagnation. Most people think that because they've been through something difficult, they've automatically become wiser. But pain doesn't guarantee wisdom. Pain only offers the opportunity. You still have to extract the lesson. You still have to sit with it, look at it, and ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Otherwise, it's just suffering without meaning. People avoid that process because they're afraid. They don't want to revisit the thing that broke them. They just want to bury it and move on, but moving on without learning is just running in circles. You might change your surroundings, your job, your relationships, but internally, you stay the same. You keep making the same decisions that led to pain in the first place, not because you're weak, but because you didn't take the time to understand what the pain was trying to teach you. When something hurts, when something breaks your heart or your spirit, that's where the gold is. That's where your potential starts to take shape. Because in that moment of breakdown, everything gets stripped away. Your pride, your illusions, your distractions, and what's left is real. Raw, honest. Pain forces you to face things you were trying to ignore. And it's in that confrontation that wisdom begins to emerge. But you have to choose it. You have to turn around and face the wound, not just with emotion, but with clarity. Ask yourself, what did I learn about myself from that failure? What did I ignore before that betrayal? What part of me allowed that chaos to continue for so long? What belief was I operating under that led me into that situation? And most importantly, what needs to change in me so I don't repeat it? The answers won't always feel good. They'll challenge your ego. They'll expose the parts of you that are still immature, still afraid, still clinging to old ways of thinking. But that's the cost of growth. Real growth doesn't happen when you feel strong. It happens when you admit you were wrong. When you say, I didn't handle that the way I should have, I let my fear make decisions for me. I stayed in something toxic because I didn't believe I deserved better. That level of honesty is where transformation begins. Your wounds aren't just marks of suffering, they're maps. They point to where you were broken, and also to where you have the chance to become whole. But only if you stop using them as excuses. Only if you stop saying, well, that happened to me, so now I can't trust anyone. Or I failed once, so now I'm too afraid to try. That mindset doesn't honor your pain. It enslaves you to it. You end up building your life around avoiding more hurt instead of building a life based on what you've learned. And what you've learned is valuable. Maybe that heartbreak taught you what real love isn't. Maybe that failure taught you where you were unprepared or how much you were depending on shortcuts. Maybe that betrayal exposed the fact that you had no boundaries. Maybe the loss you suffered reminded you of what actually matters. These are not small things. These are pieces of truth carved out by experience, and truth gained through suffering has a weight to it. A grounding, it makes you harder to deceive, especially by yourself. That's how you turn wounds into wisdom. You stop hiding them, you stop being ashamed of them, you look at them, you name them, and you integrate them. You carry the lesson forward, not the baggage. You don't use your pain as an identity, but as a reference point. You say, I've been through that, I've faced it, I've learned, I've grown, and now I choose differently. That's real strength. That's the kind of strength that doesn't scream or demand recognition. It just shows up in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you lead, the way you live. So stop running from the things that hurt you. They're not here to destroy you, they're here to shape you, to wake you up, to give you insight you couldn't get any other way. Pain without reflection is just trauma. Pain with reflection is transformation. Choose transformation. There's a moment in life when you have to decide what kind of person you're going to be. Not based on what happened to you, not based on what you lost, not based on who let you down, but based on what you're willing to take responsibility for now. Because if you're stuck in a victim mindset, no matter how much truth there is in the story, you'll never move forward. And it's not because the pain isn't real, it is. It's that the pain has become your identity, and once that happens, you stop growing. You can tell when someone's stuck there. Everything is someone else's fault. Every failure is someone else's doing. Every setback has a name attached to it. An enemy, a parent, a partner, a boss, a system, and that may feel empowering in the short term because now you don't have to change anything. Now the burden isn't on you, but in the long term it's a trap. It robs you of agency. It convinces you that you're powerless. And if you believe that long enough, you stop trying. You just sit in it, waiting, hoping, complaining. But not changing. Being a victim of something that happened to you isn't the same as being a victim forever. There's a line, and at some point you have to say enough. You have to decide that what happened won't define who you become. You have to stop telling the same story over and over and start asking, what can I do with this now? Because when you shift from victim to creator, everything changes. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop being shaped by your circumstances and start shaping your circumstances. But it takes courage, real courage, because now there are no more excuses. Now, if you fail, it's on you. If you fall short, it's on you. If things don't work out, you can't point the finger anymore, and that's terrifying at first, because the responsibility is overwhelming. But it's also the only way to be free. The moment you decide that your life is your responsibility, no matter what happened before, is the moment you stop waiting for someone to save you and start becoming someone who can save themselves. And that's not about being perfect. It's not about pretending nothing bad ever happened. It's about looking your past in the eye and saying, you don't get to write the rest of my story. It's about asking, what now, instead of why me. It's about building something from the wreckage, even if all you have left is your will to keep going. That's what creators do. They take whatever pieces they've got and they start building. And maybe it's not much at first, but it's something, and something is better than nothing. A creator sees options. A creator sees opportunity. A creator sees power in every moment, even the painful ones, because now everything becomes material. Even failure, even rejection, even grief, it all gets recycled into fuel. But victims don't see that. Victims wait for perfect conditions. Victims wait for justice, for apologies, for the world to change. And while they're waiting, life keeps moving forward without them. This shift is internal. It's not about having more resources or better luck or more support. It's about deciding that no matter what you've been through, you still get to have a say in how your future looks. That doesn't mean the pain vanishes. It means the pain becomes part of your strength. It becomes a reference point, not an excuse. You start to say, I went through that and I'm still here. I'm still standing and I get to choose what I become now. That's where real confidence is born. Not from pretending to be strong, but from knowing what you've survived and choosing not to be defined by it. And that decision is the foundation of everything. It changes how you speak, how you show up, how you handle setbacks. Because now you're not waiting for permission. You're not asking for life to be fair. You're building anyway. Creating anyway, taking the hit and rising again anyway. You can stay in the story of what happened, or you can start writing the story of what's next. But you can't do both. You have to choose, and the choice you make will shape everything that follows. The way you speak to yourself matters more than almost anything else. And most people are walking around with a voice in their head that they don't even recognize as their own. It's been shaped by their past, by other people's opinions, by failures, by shame, by rejection. Over time, it becomes automatic. A quiet but constant narrative that says, you're not good enough. You always mess things up. Nobody really cares. And the worst part is they believe it. Not because it's true, but because they've heard it so often, they stopped questioning it. That internal narrative is powerful. It drives your decisions. It affects your confidence, your habits, your relationships, your future. If your inner voice is full of blame, doubt, and fear, then that becomes the lens through which you see the world. You don't take risks because you assume you'll fail. You don't trust people because you're waiting to be heard. You don't speak up because you think you don't matter, but it's not the world doing that to you. It's the story running in your head. And the truth is, that story needs to be challenged. You weren't born talking to yourself that way. You picked it up somewhere. Maybe it was a parent who criticized everything you did. Maybe it was teachers who told you not to aim too high. Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe it was betrayal. But whatever it was, it left a mark. And over time, you began repeating it to yourself until it became your identity. But identity isn't fixed. It's built, it's shaped, and it can be reshaped. If you're willing to rewrite the script, that's the work most people avoid. Because rewriting your inner narrative means you have to stop lying to yourself about who you are. You have to stop identifying with your lowest moments. You have to stop clinging to the idea that your past is a life sentence. It's not, it's a chapter, and you're allowed to write the next one differently. But you can't do that if the voice in your head keeps dragging you back into shame, regret, and fear. And you don't silence that voice by yelling over it. You silence it by understanding it. Where did it come from? Who taught you to talk to yourself like that? Whose voice is that really? And is it actually helping you? Because if it's not helping you, then why keep repeating it? People say they want to change their lives, but they're still narrating their lives like nothing can change. That contradiction is why they stay stuck. When you start to shift your self-talk, everything changes. Not in some fluffy, magical way, but in a deeply practical, measurable way. You start showing up differently. You take more risks. You recover faster when you fail. You stop apologizing for existing. You begin to act like someone who deserves a better future because now you actually believe it. That belief doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from facing the parts of you that feel broken and saying, even here, even now, I'm still worthy of rebuilding. This doesn't mean you lie to yourself. It doesn't mean you ignore your flaws. It means you speak the truth, but with strength. I made mistakes, but I'm growing. I was hurt, but I'm healing. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm moving forward anyway. That's how you create momentum. That's how you change the trajectory. It starts with the story you're telling yourself every single day. And yes, it takes repetition. It takes awareness. You have to catch those old thoughts the moment they show up, before they settle back in as facts. Because they're not facts, they're echoes. They're old scripts from a version of you that didn't know better. But now you do, or at least you're learning, and that's enough to start the rewrite. This is not some motivational slogan. It's hard psychological reality. Your mind becomes what you feed it. And if you want a different future, you need a different voice inside your head. One that speaks to your potential, not just your pain. One that pushes you forward instead of pulling you down. One that tells the truth, not the story of who you've been, but the truth of who you can become. Speak like someone who is building something. People think that transformation comes from some huge breakthrough. Some epic decision, a perfect plan, a complete overhaul of their life. But that's not how change usually happens. Change is built one small decision at a time, one honest choice, one uncomfortable step forward, and most people overlook this because it's not dramatic. It's not impressive. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough. But that's exactly why it works, because it's consistent. Because it's real. Because it's something you can actually sustain. You don't need to have everything figured out. That's just another excuse your mind gives you to delay action. The truth is, no one starts out knowing exactly where they're going. What matters is that you move. You do the next right thing. You clean your room. You make the phone call. You stop lying. You go to the gym. You sit down and write the first paragraph. It's not glamorous, but it's powerful. Because the smallest step taken with full intention is more transformative than the grandest idea that's never acted on. The problem is, People are waiting for motivation. They think they need to feel ready, but readiness is a myth. Motivation is unreliable. Some days it's there, most days it's not. And if your actions are tied to your emotions, you're going to be inconsistent. You'll take one step forward, two steps back, and eventually tell yourself the story that you're just not capable of changing. But the truth is, capability is built through effort, not emotion, discipline, integrity, repetition. That's where it happens. You want to change your future. Start casting votes for the person you want to become today, right now, even if you don't feel like it. Every time you choose action over avoidance, you reinforce the identity of someone who's moving forward. It rewires your brain, it builds trust in yourself, and that trust is critical. Because most people don't follow through on their goals, not because they lack ability, but because they don't trust themselves to do what they say they're going to do. They've made too many promises they've broken, so when they say, "This time will be different," a part of them already knows it won't. That's why you have to start small. Keep the promises you make to yourself. Build credibility with yourself. That's how you rebuild trust. That's how you build momentum, and momentum matters. Because once you start stacking small wins, everything changes. You go from someone who thinks about change to someone who's actually doing it. And once you feel that shift, even just a little, it becomes easier to keep going. You stop asking, "Can I really do this?" and start saying, "I'm already doing it." That mindset shift is everything. Because when your actions begin to confirm your new identity, change doesn't feel forced, it feels inevitable. But it starts with the decision to stop stalling, to stop telling yourself the lie that tomorrow is going to be better just because you want it to be. Tomorrow only gets better if you make today count, not in some extreme, unrealistic way, but in the little choices. Wake up on time, tell the truth, say no to something that's draining you, say yes to something that challenges you. That's where the real transformation begins, not in the big moments, but in the ones no one sees. And yes, you're going to mess up. That's part of it. You'll have days where you fall short, where you break the pattern, where you feel like giving up. That doesn't mean it's over. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. Progress is never a straight line. But every time you get back up, every time you choose to return to your path instead of quitting entirely, you reinforce something deeper than discipline. You reinforce your resilience. You show yourself that this time it's not about being perfect, it's about being committed. So if you want to change your future, stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for clarity or certainty or the perfect plan. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can, one small, powerful step at a time, because the future doesn't belong to those who dream about change. It belongs to those who take action, especially when it's hard, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when no one's watching. The life you want is built in moments just like this. You've been through things that could have broken you. You've seen darkness, you've made mistakes, you've hurt and been hurt, and yet here you are. And that's not meaningless. That's not random. That pain you carry, the chapters of your past that still echo in your mind, they aren't just scars. They're a map. They hold weight, and that weight can be transformed. It can be refined, but only if you're willing to use it. Most people try to bury it. They hide their struggles. They pretend the past never happened, or they shrink under the weight of shame, convinced they have nothing to offer. But here's the truth. If you've walked through something hard and you're still standing, then you know something other people don't. You know how to survive. You know how to climb. You know how to rise. That's wisdom, and that wisdom is not just for you. It's meant to be passed on. So many people are desperate for someone real, not someone perfect, not someone who always got it right, but someone who's walked through the fire and came out carrying water for others. If you've made it through pain, don't waste it. Don't sit on it. Don't let it rot inside you as bitterness. Share it. Speak it. Turn it into something useful. Because there's someone out there who's right now in the place you used to be, and your story could be the spark that pulls them out. That doesn't mean you broadcast your trauma to the world. It means you stop pretending that strength is about never falling. It means you lead with honesty, that you carry your past like a lesson, not a curse. It means you speak not from the mountaintop of perfection, but from the valley you had to crawl out of. That's where your credibility lives. That's where your authority comes from, not in what you know, but in what you've lived through. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need a title. You don't need a platform. You just need to be willing to say, "This is what I went through, and here's what I learned." That small act of courage can ripple farther than you think. Because when you own your pain and repurpose it, you stop being just a survivor. You become a guide. You become a light. And the world is starving for that kind of authenticity. We're in a culture obsessed with appearances, with image, with pretending everything is under control. But real leadership, real influence, comes from vulnerability, from truth, from the willingness to be seen, even in your imperfection. And that takes strength. Not everyone can do it. But if you can, even a little, you'll find that the very things you once wished you could erase become the bridge that connects you to others. The past that once isolated you becomes the very path to deeper meaning. It's not just about helping others either. When you use your past to lift someone else, it heals something in you too. It gives your struggle purpose. It redeems the pain. It turns suffering into service, and that's a different kind of freedom, because you stop being defined by what happened to you. You stop being trapped in the memory. You reclaim your story. You reframe it. You become the author of it instead of just a character being dragged through the plot. But that only happens if you're brave enough to speak, brave enough to share, brave enough to let the past become a tool instead of a chain. That takes honesty. That takes humility. But more than anything, it takes the decision to stop wasting what you've been through. Because if you've walked through hell and made it out, the most powerful thing you can do now is go back and help someone else find the way. You've been through what you've been through for a reason. Maybe you didn't choose it. Maybe you wouldn't wish it on anyone. But it's yours now, and the question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to hide it away? Or are you going to use it to make something better? The future isn't just about who you become. It's also about how many people you help become who they were meant to be. And maybe that starts with you telling the truth about where you've been. Someone out there needs to hear it.